The topic I chose to talk about today is called the battle for the digital consumer, and some of it in terms of implications on strategic M&A. Yesterday we heard from data scientists, both Rick and DJ, about big data and some of the applications, some of the cool and unique applications. This talk is really sort of the industrial or the commercial application of those big data capabilities. And, you know, I called it the Clash of the Titans because we have large companies in the internet digital ecosystem that are fashioning very unique business opportunities because of both the availability of consumer data and the technology to do something cool about it. And what's interesting is it's causing a convergence of business models. So we're seeing hardware companies buy software companies, hardware companies buy media companies moving into e-commerce moving into SaaS delivery, all kinds of machinations of companies that are finding themselves in each other's shorts because of this sort of convergent opportunity, all brought about by consumer data. In fact, I was actually pondering what to call this talk. I also thought maybe convergence is a bitch. Wouldn't be a bad one, because as it turns out that this convergent M&A, this moving into new spaces, is uncomfortable, and it's difficult, and it's hard. I know because I was part of one of these transactions back in Yossi's time. I represented a company called AOL in an acquisition, a little acquisition of a company. There's me. There's my client AOL and the company. This is public, by the way. Acquisition of a company called Time Warner. And back in the year 2000, this was heralded a mass sort of convergence play. It was supposed to change the nature of media and internet, and yet obviously at $183 billion, it made a big splash. But as I'm sure you all well know, this has been viewed as one of the most disastrous deals of all time. So you're sitting there saying, why am I talking about a deal that was so bad? Well, it wasn't so bad for the AOL shareholders. Remember, and many times in M&A, it's a zero-sum game, which is important because not all transactions, not all shareholder groups, end up the same. They did rather well. In fact, some suggest that there's a result of this transaction. There was a $55 billion shift of wealth from one set of shareholders to another. It was the largest legal but inappropriate transfer of wealth in history. And look, people have said that the AOL shareholders made out like bandits. I say bunk. No bandits ever made that amount of money. So it is dangerous, and there are significant consequences. And by the way, it's also remunerative. That was the $60 million fee, which I just hold out as my sort of high watermark and haven't made it until I pass that again. So I got a question. It's DLD, Digital Life Design. We've got world-renowned entrepreneurs. We've got data scientists and heralding academics. What are you doing with an investment banker on the stage? Why are you listening? This is, after all, the class that brought about the global financial meltdown, massive destruction of wealth, and brought into question the tenets of our capitalist system. Sounds pretty bad when you put it that way. I mean, what are we doing listening to one of these douchebags, right? I mean, what group could possibly have less credibility than investment bankers? All right. Lance Armstrong. Okay, well, Lance is not here, and so you'll have to just put up with me. But hey, look, it's not all that bad, right? I mean, I think that there is a better way to do intermediation of M&A, and what we try and do is help large companies, the Googles, Yahoos, Amazons, eBays, Microsofts, Twitters, Facebooks of the world, think through, in this convergent world, what kind of capabilities do they need? What kind of strategies should they employ in this convergent data-driven world that we live in. And then once you've sort of discerned what it is they need, then figure out what targets make the most sense to go after on an objective basis, as opposed to trying to pawn off or sell a piece of inventory to a buyer. And this hopefully yields more logical results. In fact, we're of the view that any company that's doing well should not launch a process because it's adverse selection. Who wants to buy a company that doesn't have a vision for their future? And so I suppose I could have called this fire your investment banker because your rockstar company is not for sale. Graphic brought to you by the NRA. So let's get into it, shall we? We've, as you well know, had different phases of media that we've gone through. We had the traditional phase, which was very much a broadcast model, push delivery, not a lot of choice, very expensive to launch properties. We then moved in sort of the 80s, 90s to what they called new media, which was really just sort of narrowcast, cable, subscription radio, where there were more choices. It was a little bit less expensive to launch a company, but still pretty limited. Then we had online 15 years ago or so, which changed the nature of media consumption. It became a pull for consumers. And it was cheaper still to launch a company, and a lot of rapid change. And we've moved now into an era I call science-ified, and it's really based on this sort of data-driven world where it's entirely different yet again, where there is enormous opportunity. It's not just impression-based media that's the primary monetization vehicle. There's e-commerce, there's services, there's many things. And the change is extremely rapid. And by the way, it costs almost nothing to launch a company. So it's in this world, and probably the best demonstration of this is the current state of the display industry. This is a ridiculously complicated chart, something we started putting together years ago that maps all the players between the advertiser, or the marketer on one side, and the consumer on the other, with the publisher in there as well. And obviously, one look at it tells you that there is too many companies, highly fragmented. But it's really it demonstrates how prolific this new world is now that all this consumer data is available. We shifted in media from buying context to buying audiences, and it created a proliferation of companies that do everything from data mining to data intelligence to the audience segmentation, optimization, and monetization of media. So that's one example of how this sort of data explosion has changed an industry. And by the way, we started publishing these charts, and it's amazing. They've really gone around the world. This particular chart's had over 750,000 views and downloads. It's been viewed in 161 countries. I didn't know there was 161 countries. And it's been all over the media. It's in lots of books. But most importantly, this gets used by large strategics as they think through what targets they ought to go after. It's a fairly complete ecosystem of what's going on. And by the way, it's not just display advertising. We've done up these sort of ecosystem charts for the search, video, mobile, gaming, commerce, social, and marketing technology. All told, there's 10 of these with over 2,000 companies, a huge amount of, obviously, fragmentation in this digital universe, a testament to that point I mentioned earlier about very, very cheap to launch companies. Then in the fall, we came out with this chart, which was the strategic buyer LUMAscape. Well, what we did here was we flipped it on its head and we looked at the buyers. And we segmented 165 buyers by 5 different ways. You'll see that if you look at it, the left side of the page is enterprise companies, the right side consumer. Also, we did it by type. So there's media companies, marketing, technology, largely software, and then network companies that also have a commerce component to them as well. We then also organized it by propensity. So there's these sort of four horsemen, if you will, of digital media, the original guys that comprise the majority of demand for companies, and then increasingly outer rings of companies that, again, from all of these different walks of industries that are finding themselves going after all these digital targets. And then we mapped it by motivation. So the top guys, largely the folks in software and then to a certain extent commerce, are finding these opportunities to be on the offensive. These are growth strategies. Whereas, media companies are largely been hurt by digital, and their motivations for their acquisitions have largely been defensive. Interestingly, there's these companies all trade at different valuations. Obviously, that has a big impact in terms of what they're able to pay, and they have different market caps and capabilities. So just within the circles, just the most targeted ones have over $3 trillion of market cap, $450 billion of cash, and interestingly, 87% of that is above the line. So note to self, you're an entrepreneur. The guys above the line are the ones that you ultimately want to attract. We mapped 1,000 acquisitions that these guys have done over the course of the last 5 years, totaling over $250 billion, and the results are fascinating. Not long enough here to go into, but it's on our website if you're interested. In fact, all of these LUMAscapes are on our website for download. So you want to talk about patterns that connect. I know that's the theme today, but if you look at sort of what these strategic buyers have done in these various, just in these four ecosystems, it looks something like that. So media companies largely exploring options to expand into digital. They want to increase the percentage since they've lost viewers to the digital realm. The marketing guys obviously are taking their offline strategies online, largely driven by their customers. The technology players have basically, they produce software and offer software as a service. And heretofore, when media was sold as an art, it didn't make much sense. But now that it's sold as a science, they have products that have application. But I want to focus on this group. This is the network/commerce group, and I think this is going to be the group of companies to watch in terms of the future of all this convergent space and how it develops. In particular, of note, and remember, these may seem like disparate companies. Samsung and Facebook and MasterCard are very different companies, but at the end of the day, they all operate large consumer networks that have bits. Sometimes it's bits of content, sometimes it's bits of data, sometimes it's bits of commerce. There's four in particular that have been called out as titans. You know it well: Apple, Amazon, Google, and Facebook. And if you think about it, they're sort of in this significant battle where they're basically providing all kinds of different services, again, heretofore not having entered, and they've not competed in some of these areas. So if you put the four titans on one end, the digital consumer on the other, the battlefield is across all of these landscapes, all of these areas for monetization. You've got a bunch of players that are either allies or enemies or enablers. In the middle, largely the telcos and the cable companies and financial institutions. The weapons that they use in this battle are the devices. Amazon, new to the Kindle. In fact, a lot of these companies are rumored to be coming out with even more devices. They've got location data. They offer cloud services, payments, and even artificial intelligence. And the return path is really data about the consumer that they can monetize in a variety of ways. And in fact, if you look over time at these four companies, their capabilities have enhanced in these various areas. You see the years ticking by there in terms of just how convergent their capabilities have become, with a note that, the launch just this week of Graph Search by Facebook really brings them all together. They're obviously of different size with different capabilities, but there's lots of cash around. So these guys have the capability to not only build their own, but also to buy. Now, so far, Google's been the most prolific in terms of buying, but I would argue that as these guys get out of their realm, as they need speed to market, we will see even folks like Amazon and Facebook and even Apple be more aggressive in the M&A markets. Again, Google probably the most prolific in terms of very successfully buying and integrating capabilities as these players continue to converge. What about the other players? These are the four titans, but there are others. Microsoft, Yahoo, eBay, even AT&T and Comcast have massive networks of digital consumers to which they could apply these services as well, not to mention some of the foreign names from Asia. And who knows, maybe even Bavaria has a player that makes sense here as well. So these guys are all in the realm. The interesting thing is, for all these other players, what we don't want to have happen is just have four titans, take over and control this. That wouldn't be good for consumers. How do all these other guys play? They probably play by using mergers and acquisitions. So it's entirely possible that investment bankers are not quite the douchebags we thought. Thank you very much. And as a finale, one of the things that we do and we have some fun with is comedy videos. Here's what I did from this summer when Marissa Mayer was named to the Yahoo CEO position, and it just highlights, because of this Convergence stuff, all the changing nature of the jobs. If we can roll it in.
Dimes for a kiss, I wasn't looking for this, but now you're in my way. Your stare was holding, ripped jeans, skin was showing, hot night, wind was blowing. Where you think you're going, baby? Hey, I just met you, and this is crazy, but here's my number, so call me maybe. It's hard to look right at you, baby, but here's my number, so call me maybe. Hey, I just met you, and this is crazy, but here's my number, so call me maybe. And all the other boys try to chase me, but here's my number, so call me maybe. You took your time with